women have to lose more when they invest. At least that is the perception, because our pots of money are per default normally a little bit smaller in comparison to men.
60% of women have more potential to think more about investing and to actually do something if they feel affected or inspired. Welcome to the Lilith Podcast. I am Caroline Muriel, your host, and invite you to join me to explore what sovereignty means for us as modern women, just like you and me. The Lilith Myth is a story of a woman who stepped into her sovereignty and freedom. In the first season of the Lilith Podcast, I have in-depth conversations with business anthropologist Lilith Wacker about the money truth of women. You will learn a lot about yourself, about your conscious and unconscious money behaviors, and hopefully it'll be worthwhile listening for you. In this episode, I'm wondering, Lilith, what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, we are talking about why women are not likely to invest into the stock market and other financial products as opposed to men.
Yeah, and I think you found another very compelling data on the internet as a source why it's so important for us to spend that half an hour with you listening, how we can overcome our key investment blocks that prevent us women from achieving financial autonomy and sovereignty. What was that data? I'm very curious. It was shocking to me, actually.
Yeah, it was shocking to me as well. So one I found a study over the European market that said that 29% women invest less than their male counterparts, but plan, at least that's the good message, plan to do more. And another more holistic number that I found was that almost 60% of women do not engage in like the very important aspects of financial sovereignty and well-being, which is investing, insurance, retirement, and also long-term planning. And I think this is exactly why we are sitting here and why we are doing that, aren't we?
Yes, definitely, because it gives us Lilith moments and chills to think that we're behind with our investments. We have been talking a lot about, how women behave around money when it comes to spending, lending, borrowing, and also find quite a few interesting findings from the study you conducted on behalf of Accenture Song. But we kept this one on purpose a bit later, because everything we've discussed up until now is very important in order to actually understand why those numbers are still lower and why we're withholding ourselves from financial sovereignty, to say it bluntly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in our study, we found really a couple of a little bit deeper reasons than what we normally just hear as women, that we are much more risk averse or that we are simply not interested in that topic. That might be part of the truth, but there are more truth to that.
Yeah, and that's why I love talking with you, because you really don't stop where our brain would stop just because somebody else tells us, oh, women are like this, and it's not true at all. You have found, and we're going to talk about the core issue first before we give a couple of more blocks. And I'm sure that every woman listening to us will find herself in some of those blocks, unfortunately, but we're here to make them aware and present, so that you can reflect on them and that you can actually think about, what can I do to overcome this block? Because in the long run, that's going to pay off massively in terms of financial sovereignty, in terms of quality of life, and also peace of mind. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. But before we can even go into those blocks, let's talk about the core issue that you found in the study that we all need to be aware of.
Yeah, I think we tapped upon it in each of our previous episodes, but it really comes back to the perception of what money really is for us women, and how we perceive it and what to do with it. And really, we as women, we seem, according to our study, we seem not to prioritize the idea of accumulating money just for its own sake and for the sake of becoming super rich. This wasn't even a need or a goal to women, because there also was this saying, or this slight prejudice of money is character harming, and if you think too much about that, and if you're dealing too much with it, there seemed to be the danger of becoming a not so nice and kind human being. And the answer to that was also that if women um, were engaged in investments and money and education around money, we have been much more purpose driven. So why are we doing that? What for? And who's benefiting from that? What is the social impact when I invest in this or that product? And it was really much more value based and based on this idea of a win-win situation where women put their money, as opposed to just one person, meaning I, is benefiting from it.
You've covered a lot there, and we can't repeat everything we've said in the past episodes. So we invite you to go back and see which episodes draw your attention, because I think especially the first 3 episodes explain very well why this is the core issue that you found. And I mean, I can totally relate with it. It never was really my aim to invest so that my bank account would explode. Although I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I think there needs to be more to it, because I needed to know, why am I doing this? Why would I make this effort? Why would I take some risks, even because investing doesn't seem to be the safest option to me, or didn't, but we'll get to that in a moment. So what I really love is that you have written in your study report, final report, women invest in much more than just a financial product. They invest in themselves and in their social relations before they actually invest in a financial product to accumulate money or build wealth for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that just brings it home so nicely and to the point. And I think the findings were stunning. But what was your starting point for the study?
Yeah, the starting point was really for us, obviously, to answer the question on why women invest not as much as men. Why is that really? And therefore, we decided to apply the methodology of ethnography to really understand the phenomenon of money, rather, instead of helping our financial service clients to paint their financial services pink, if you want, right? We have to think to attract more women into becoming financially more active and sovereign, right? This is a big phenomenon, and the facts and numbers are since years more or less the same. So it was clear that we had an unanswered question here.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you answered it for every woman who does not know about her own motivations, why she doesn't invest or why she would want to invest. Yeah, we invite you to download our workbook and really make the exercises there to be aware. So you can go to lilithpodcast.com and download that workbook, because now we're going to deep dive. So let's say you understand how you're wired and what decisions you're subconsciously made, mostly in favor of social relations, what we found. But let's say you're now at the stage that you want to invest, but still something is holding you back. And we are going to go now into those 4 key blocks that you found, Lilith, when you talked with these 18 women from Austria, Switzerland, and Germany. What were the blocks for them? So let's start with the first block. What was that?
So I wouldn't claim that this study really answers each and every woman's life context, but this is rather like the big pattern that we saw across all the women, in the hope that this resonates to even more women, which is why we are sharing that here, right? But the first block really that women had to overcome, or that we as women are invited to overcome, is really like the fear of loss and risk. And we have been talking in a previous episode about why saving was so popular amongst women, is that you have like immediate liquidity, you can be prepared for the worst case if something happens, right? And an investment, it was pretty clear that you rather have to think a little bit more long term. It's not necessarily a super liquid asset. In combination with you are affected probably by a gender pay gap or unpaid care work, so your pot of money is anyways a little bit smaller than in comparison to a man. So women have to lose more when they invest. At least that is the perception, because our pots of money are per default normally a little bit smaller than in comparison to men.
So just to define what you mean with liquid assets, that's the money you have on your bank account readily available. And
Yeah.
if you invest, it's bound into a product, so you can't get it out. So if you save for an emergency, it's not a good idea to put it into a long-term investment, because you're not going to get it out. If you want to or need to buy a new washing machine, was one of the examples, I think. So I think there are so many things that you just said. Maybe if we just unpack 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
So first of all, you're saying that women have to lose more than men. At least they perceive it as we could lose more. Can you elaborate that a bit? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, obviously, I mean, it is connected to the fact that women don't earn as much as men in comparison. Like if they conduct the same job, right? That means per default your salary is smaller and not so much, and therefore you have to be economic about how you're or efficient about your decisions on what you do with your money, right? It's much easier if you earn 200 or 300 euros more per month to put that away into a long-term product, right? And if you don't have that, obviously you rather stick to saving your money to have that money if something happens to you.
Okay, I got that now. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So that's the overall what women have to lose. But also, you saw that women are afraid of losing that money because we're not used to investing necessarily, and we don't want to lose. So it's kind of like can be uncomfortable if we invest into something and we don't know the outcome. So it's associated with a risk, right?
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, I think this is where the whole risk averseness probably comes from. If you don't have as much, you think twice about if you put that on risk.
Hmm. And also, I can tell from personal experience, even if I had enough money to invest, I didn't, because there was such a strong fear in me of losing money, because I was kind of told it's not really safe to invest. So I'd rather have that money on the bank account, not because I needed it for emergencies, but I was afraid of losing or taking that risk even to invest.
Yeah, that is another important factor that we have also been seeing, which is the perception of investing of the family and how you have been raised and educated around money. So we had respondents or whose parents would say to them, "Hey, let's invest some money into the stock market so that you get familiar with the whole system." And we had respondents where the parents knew a neighbor who lost a lot of money in the stock market by trading. And depending on those experiences, when our respondents were younger, the perception of investing was pretty much set into stone, and would determine how you perceive the pure act of investing into the stock market.
So that brings me to the thought that if you want to know what blocks you in terms of investing, maybe also have a look at what your parents did or what you have learned from your surroundings about investing. And have you seen people investing successfully, or have you not seen anybody invest ever, which makes it a bit more strange because there's no experience to refer to.
Yeah, and also I have an experience with that. When I was younger, we had this stock market competition in school, right? I joined that, and I think I was one of the best investors back then, and I came home super proud. And said like, hey, I won this little prize from the bank because I had a really good portfolio at the stock market. And my dad would say, the stock market is gambling, right? And it really, yeah, it accompanied me quite a while, this thought, before I had to reframe it and before I got into a little bit deeper financial education in order to understand when the stock market or being active there is gambling, and that there's a big difference between investing and trading and all that kind of stuff, right? But it took me a while.
Yeah. And I think there's also this statistics that women actually, they are the better investors and lose less
Yeah.
because they probably gamble less, or we gamble less because we're more cautious. Maybe it comes back to we know we have to lose more. So when we make an investment, we really better make sure that we have triple checked it and understood it properly. And maybe we start small and not with a massive amount straight away, just to learn. And I love your example because as a game, you learned how to deal with it without having to risk it all. And well, just the feedback was a bit different than you expected, but you were proud of yourself, right? When you came home.
Yeah, I can well remember that. I was pretty proud of myself and thinking, oh, that could be a job even. But my dad, he had another opinion.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you wrote somewhere in the study report that money is like a social phenomenon, but also a family matter. So I think you can see that from your example very well. And probably could talk about the fear of loss and risk for a long time, but we want to move on because there are a couple of other blocks, like maybe your family is actually favorable in terms of investing, and people have done it, but still something is holding you back. So what could be the second block that stops women from investing?
Yeah, I think it resonates with all of us, and not just with women. It is really like this lack of transparency and this high complexity that comes along with financial products these days, right? Because those products are being produced by a financial world with a certain language, with long contracts, with a lot of complexity, with some fees, with some words that are not very familiar. And imagine if you have the need to take a decision around your money, and you have like a need for being secure and safe and not losing money. You either have to spend a lot of time to get to that transparency, which means that you would have to invest some time to educate yourself and make the complexity more simple for you to understand, or you have to build a lot of trust. So you have those two options to navigate the lack of transparency and complexity. And I think my hypothesis would be it's not just for women, but this is for us people. It's a huge block if you don't understand what you're signing there.
Yeah, I mean, all the small print and all the conditions, and there's always the fear looming somewhere that I could make a mistake and an oversight, and then it's written all in this complex language that you need a lawyer to understand, and then you don't know. So it's kind of like a mess. Let's call it a mess. And I think we all struggle with it, and I agree with you. It's like, as consumers, it's really tricky, and also all the rules and regulations that are in place, even opening sometimes an account. I think I once tried to open an account, and I think I needed to sign up like for 3 or 4, because then at the end of the process, somebody told me, no, you're not qualified because you're not living in this country or that or whatever. So, like, it can be super frustrating and stop someone straight away. If we, especially as a woman, if you have like kids to juggle, you have got your other like unpaid care work, or you go and work part-time or full-time on top, like, where would we even get that time from? So it's a very tricky one, I feel.
Yes, and please bear in mind that this study was conducted like in the European areas, right? Globally, it's not even the block of lack of transparency and complexity. It's even the block of not having the possibility to even have a bank account in certain countries of this world, right?
Yeah. And maybe just start simple, like pick the most simple thing that you can understand. When I go to a doctor and he can't tell me why he's doing a certain treatment, I don't do it, because I want to know that that person actually knows what they are doing. And if they can't explain it to me in easy words, then maybe it's also a sign to take the hands off and look for something more simple and something a bit more straightforward that I can overlook over the longer term, because I don't want, I want to sleep well. I don't want to wake up in the middle of the night and think, okay, have I missed something here?
Yeah.
So peace of mind is very important. And on that note, I think it's a good time to say we're not giving any financial advice here. This is purely for your educational purpose from our experience and what you saw in the study, because we feel that it's important to start thinking about it and start talking about it so that we can educate ourselves, and that leads to financial sovereignty. And I think that's part of the financial sovereignty, and that's where it starts. What do you think, Lilith?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have the need to get more transparency on any of those products, really start again. We had that, I think, in our previous episode. Start talking about that with your friends, with your trusted people. Search yourself an advisor or something like that. But don't be ashamed just because you might not understand the complexity and the language of those products.
Yeah, find that doctor that can explain things in easy ways, but lets you build your own opinion about it. And be aware, like you said before, whatever you have heard about investment before, just put that little grain of salt into it too, and just really form your own opinion. This is about sovereignty. So you will also see the fruits and you will see the consequences of your actions. And we don't want you to run straight away. It's really start thinking and talking about it, is what we want to say here.
Yes, and there's another thing. We know that for many, many women, probably even including ourselves, this is not a hobby, right? But this is a necessity for you to engage with and gain more education and sovereignty with, in order to prevent financial losses in the future. So there's a good reason on why to spend some time with that.
On
So
that note, also don't, sorry, on that note, also don't rely only on the government to take care of you when you're old. So pension gaps are present today, but they might be even more in the future. And we see all inflation and everything happening. So even if you have got a certain sum in mind that you will have in your retirement, the purchasing power of it will reduce. So meaning you get less for that amount probably in the future. And as a 20-year-old, I remember I was sitting at the kitchen table with my parents, and there was this guy, this insurance guy or whatever he was, I don't even remember. And as a 20-year-old, he wanted to explain to me, okay, well, for your pension, it's good if you put that already and invest that in the government program or something subsidized by the government. We have that here in Germany. And something in me was like, no, it's not relevant for me now. And I also don't really, I don't know who that guy is. And I don't think I want to, put money for this guy into a bank account every month. So that was my 20-year-old me. As a 40-year-old or mid-40s, I can see the older age a bit more clearly. Still, it feels really far away from me, so I don't really think about it too much. But, our podcast and talking with you about those principles made a lot more sense and talked much more to me than what this guy said to me years ago at the kitchen table. Obviously, I didn't sign up anything, and I am still wanting to do things on my own terms. I guess that's part of my urge for sovereignty. But that brings us also to the third block, right, Lilith?
Yeah, exactly. You perfectly described it in your example already. Is like, really, it is so hard for us, and I mean, yes, for us women, but I think this is also like a very general thing for us human beings to plan long term financially and to project yourself into a future scenario, and especially how your future bank account will look like, right? So in the study, we've been hearing a lot of stories from especially young women saying like, yeah, well, I mean, I'm having a really good education. I'm not planning to work part-time for the case I will become a mother. So the plan was very clear. But then when we talked like to older women, the insight came that life happens and that it's hard to plan into the future. And also to project yourself into the future. It was hard for people to imagine that there possibly wouldn't be enough extra money on your bank account to buy a little flowers for your kitchen table and to keep your lifestyle on the status that you have right now. I think it's a very human thing. I think our brain is maybe not very good in that. Also, like imagining exponential growth, we are also not good in that. It's just hard to imagine.
Yeah, so we need some bridges to help us think there.
Yeah.
And I think there's one example that really sticks to me, which is the paper folding example, which a very favorite, let's say, mentor and thought leader in the investment space is using a lot. It's saying paper folding, meaning if you fold a paper and you fold it again, then it's very, you think it's only that thin or that thick. But if you fold it more and more, then I think at 52 folds or 37, you would actually reach the moon if you could fold the paper that often. So I think just, helping to imagine, okay, what would that mean if I put aside regularly and small amounts, but I do it and I don't forget about it because of everyday life. That can also help us to think a bit more longer term and understand the impact that our actions today have longer term.
Absolutely. This is one thing. So it's hard to imagine how things could look like in the future. Other stories that we heard was that women had like the approach of, even if they reached a certain age, like 60 or 65, where they could get some pension, that they said, no, I want to I want to stay active, and if money is not enough, I would be still doing something because that's how I am, right? So this idea of being active and staying active until the end of time was also pretty dominant, and we only could make sense of that this is because it is super hard for us to imagine the inevitable end of our lives, and this is also a painful projection, right? And a painful projection if you're becoming older, that you might need some help, that might cost some money, right? And you might
Yes.
need some care, and it's a very unfavorable thought that many people tend to push away. But reality is you will probably need some money for that time.
I think you can see that very clearly in your life and around the unpaid care work, but also the paid care work, how much that actually costs. And yeah, I think our brains are just wired, like we go back and we think, okay, what we have from experience, we project that into the future. And if we're in a good status today, we project that into the future and just expect that to happen, but it might not be the case. So I think that's kind of like the twist our brains do. But let's go to the fourth block, because I think we already touched on it a bit, because I didn't really trust that guy at the kitchen table. And I'm not saying he's not a good guy. I don't even remember his name or who he was. But yeah, I just didn't trust that somebody else who doesn't even know me will be able to tell me what's good for me. What did you see in the study?
Yeah, we saw similar things, right? People know, I think, latest since the internet, people know that like salespeople from institutions are getting rewarded by selling something. And this is something that creates some trust issues, right? And exactly like you said, this is like what we heard a lot, like how does this guy or this woman know what my life will look like in a couple of years from now? And they will just get rewarded by selling me something, right? Which is also, to a certain extent, I would say, a prejudice, because it neglects a little bit the fact that you should better be safe than sorry by doing something, and doing something is better than doing nothing. On the other hand, like, it's totally understandable, because we also heard stories from people who couldn't even find all the contracts that they signed like 10 years ago, and couldn't even explain what all this was about and if this would be valuable to them or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's coming back to the risk of loss, the time, the protection capacity, and then if it's not built on like a solid, trustworthy relationship, and maybe with somebody who has actually walked his talk, like if somebody has done a lot of investment and they have been successful, maybe look at them and see what have they done and learn from them, not take over exactly what they were doing, because they might have a different background or a different living situation. But I think it's really good to see, okay, who has actually been successful investing, and who do I trust that they really have been successful? Because I think there's also quite a lot of people out there who pretend they have been successful and don't want to say that they haven't. So I think, it's this judgment. And I think as a woman, like, trust your senses more than being afraid of something. Just really go inwards and see, okay, can I trust that person? Can I see those actions and what they are doing? Are they walking their talk, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and when you say trust your senses, I guess it's not like trust your senses if this is a good or bad financial product. But if you are sitting in an advisory situation and you feel that an advisor doesn't listen carefully to your life context and comes up with a good solution, then I think you can listen to your senses, and maybe you search for an alternative, or maybe you do your own research about those things. And I think the block 2 and block 4, like the lack of transparency and complexity, and the missing trust in advisors and the sold products, can be overcome by do your own research and spending time with some education and with some awareness about your life context. This is the reason why we have been doing this complete season, right? And this is the antidote to staying completely passive and starting your way towards more financial sovereignty.
Yeah. Well, those are 4 blocks. I think they are the main ones. There's also one reason or one thing you can do is, like, if I go to a doctor and I get a reply that I don't think is valuable, I go to the next one and ask for a second opinion. So I think that is also something we can do regarding investment, and maybe even a third. And if 3 people tell you something different, then okay, I would have to learn even more about it. But again, it's not financial advice. We just really want to share with you the path we have gone through, and the learnings we have done in order to not rely and give the power away to institutions or to the government, and fully rely on them. Now, Lilith, like in summary, what could we give as practical steps if a woman who has listened to us thinks, okay, beyond my social relations, beyond investing in my self-identity, I want to invest in maybe some financial products in the long term? What would we in a nutshell say?
Yeah. First of all, I would say here we are navigating the securing survival part, which might be underrepresented in a woman's life, depending on your life context. So if you see that, it would be worthwhile to sit down and do a little self-assessment and think about what is your approach and what are your opinions, what are your educational beliefs on investment as such, right? And then become aware of what are really your blocks. Is it maybe the idea of yourself that you're not made to understand those complex things, and or whatever that might be. Just become aware and see where you are at, right? And if you know that, you can really just start to do your own research. Start researching what is, for example, an ETF, and for whom does it make sense, and does that fit your life context, for example. And check out a couple of trustworthy information and sources. Talk to your friends, family members, start talking about money and start ask questions. Yeah, and then really go down that little rabbit hole. And for some of you, maybe it will become a hobby, because actually, that's my personal opinion. I think it's a really interesting topic.
Yeah, well, we do the whole first season of the Lilith podcast about the women's money truth. What spoke to me in the first place was, okay, the financial world has been made by men for men. And I think we see more and more women talking and looking into this topic and educating themselves and making products from women to women. So maybe it's also worthwhile just checking out what is out there on the internet done by women, because they might already understand a little bit more how a woman approaches the thought of investing with everything that is going on in our life today. So I found that really helpful as sources. Well, Lilith, we said at the beginning, like 60% of women have more potential to think more about investing and to actually do something if they feel affected or inspired by us or by other sources. So thank you so much, Lilith. I think that was a really important one to understand our blocks so that we can overcome them. And if you need help, if you want to have a chat, or if you have other blocks that we haven't discussed, we invite you to join the Alignment community. It's alignment.community. And there we can have much more in-depth discussions. It's a safe space. That's a closed space. Lilith and I will be there to have conversations, talk things with you through, not in terms of advising you on any financial products, but if you have the need to talk, we are here. And I'll put the link below this episode into the show notes where you can find us. Thank you so much, Lilith. It's always so mind-blowing and revealing how we as women tick and what we can do to step more into our sovereignty. Thanks so much.
You're welcome, really, and thank you for asking me all those questions, because sometimes I tend to delve in those studies and really asking me those step-by-step questions is, even for myself, mind-blowing. So it was huge fun. So thanks for unpacking this with me.
Well, we support each other in this journey and invite everybody else to do the same. Bye for now, and see you in the next episode, where we will wrap up what we have discussed and what the future looks like as a sovereign woman who knows her money truths.